Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. We're here to talk Beetlejuice Beetlejuice. Don't say it 3 times, Hayden, or he will appear.
For sure.
Is it
consecutive though? Like if we say it again at all in this episode, is that going to be a problem, or is it like?
See, I don't know what the rules are. I don't know like what constitutes a break.
Oops, that was my phone alarm. That was really scary. That almost. I should have said it a third time, and then because if that happened, the timing on that would have been perfect.
Is it like Candyman where he appears behind you? I don't think that's a rule, isn't it? You can come right in front.
Yeah, I don't think
the juice is loose.
He never really hides. The
yeah.
Juice is loose was such a great line, by the way.
It is.
Watching that in a crowd of people in Buffalo, I think that line hit even harder than they've even meant for it to.
After more than 35 years, we get a sequel to the original.
That's crazy
film. And you brought it up, I think, this week off air, but you know, Tim Burton, or maybe on air, I don't even remember anymore. But Tim Burton, first 3 films were Pee-wee's Big Adventure, then this,
or Beetlejuice, right,
and then Batman.
Yeah, Hollywood was weird in the 80s, dude. That's a crazy run.
It really is, and 2 of them with Michael Keaton, who's not, you know, he's not a like B-tier actor, at least not then.
No.
So,
for sure.
Yeah, but the gang is all back, minus those who had serious legal trouble in the interim, and the 2, Gina Davis and Alec Baldwin, who were the ghosts in the original film, and they are not returning this time around. Because I guess in ghosts don't age, right? Like they shouldn't.
Oh yeah, I didn't even think about that. If that was the reasoning, which honestly, right call. Like I'm glad. I would have much rather that they weren't there than we got some weird like CGI de-aged Alec Baldwin mess.
Yeah,
I can't imagine Alec Baldwin in a post you know what world would sign on to do Beetlejuice 2 anyway. But that's a whole other topic for no show. Right. Actually,
yeah, for not anything we're gonna do. So Beetlejuice is the sequel. It's been in development hell for a long time, and multiple rewrites, delays to filming. I'm sure some of that was COVID related too.
Yeah, I wasn't even aware of that. Can you catch me up on the history real quick of like when did they announce that like they were gonna do this?
It goes back years. I don't even remember the exact date. But like years. This is one of those. It's one of those things. One of those legacy sequels where everybody starts talking after a while in interviews, like, "Yeah, we'd love to do it," you know. And then it starts picking up steam. Everybody involved gets to the point in their career where they're like, "My phone isn't ringing nonstop anymore, so let's do this.
Sign me up!" Right?
Yeah. And although Michael Keaton has had quite a mini resurgence in the last 10 years or so.
Oh, absolutely. But it is so funny to me that he made Birdman and then came back to reprise Batman and reprise Beetlejuice after doing a movie about how like relying on nostalgia bait when you're a washed up actor is bad.
I know.
But that's okay.
That's the best. So
Warner Brothers probably paid him more than the Birdman people do. I don't blame the guy.
I imagine. The rest of the gang is back though, and I'll say, like, well, one of my biggest, you know, pluses for this movie, and I think we both like this movie,
for sure,
which we'll get to. But
I would say that
the one of the biggest pluses for me is it genuinely looks like every actor in this movie wants to be there.
Oh yeah, no, that's this cast, and honestly, I feel like even the crew is having a blast because there's so much passion and craft put into. Not just the performances, but I feel like the aesthetic of it too is just like, it's perfect.
Tim Burton can sometimes, in my opinion, get a little over the top with some of his stuff. This one didn't do that. It was like just Tim Burton enough that it was Tim Burton.
Yeah. And I admire the restraint for sure. And because I would not have thought that a legacy sequel to Beetlejuice in 2024, of all of the I could have thought would describe that, I would have never guessed restraint was going to be one of them.
But yeah, they did. They showed some restraint with some of the visuals, and I think it actually helped the film quite a bit. But let's jump into story, because I'm not even sure exactly what the story totally is here. And I would argue that this isn't a movie that needed to be made, but BFD, like, it's fun and who cares?
Yeah, exactly. Like, I don't think it's necessary, but I am glad we got it. And I think they did. I really liked how they kind of caught us up to where everybody is, right? Because in Legacy sequel, I feel like that's always the interesting thing to me, right? Is like, I'm ready for this story, but like, how do you draw the point A to point B when it's been at this point, like, what, 35 years, right? So, and I think they did a really good job with that, where I think like every character they showed doing is funny and zany, but also in a way that's like believable and makes sense for like I feel like everybody's professions and where they are emotionally at life makes sense with where we left off with them in 88 or 89.
Catherine O'Hara is fantastic in this, and she's like,
she really is.
She's kind of losing it, but in a fun way.
Mm-hmm.
And she still like thinks her art is wonderful. It still isn't, but it is. She has her own studio, and this sets off with her husband, who what was his name in universe?
Oh God, Charles.
Yeah, Charles.
Okay.
I believe.
I always want to say Ed, but I don't know if Ed is the actor's name or if that's the principal in Ferris Bueller, or where the hell I'm getting that from.
Either way, he died off screen, kind of on screen, because we get some of the like
a little
kind of sort of like claymation type stuff that Tim Burton's known for, which was a really cool way to not bring the actor back because the actor was naughty.
It was a really funny way to do it, honestly. And because I thought about it, and I'm like, because it gets to a point where it's like, they're almost disrespectful. They are, I would say.
They are
intentionally about how they kill him off and the way in which he dies.
The most horrible way. Yep.
Because it's such a good bit, because it keeps going. Like, oh my God, so he died in a plane crash? It's like, no, actually, he survived the crash. Like, oh, so he drowned? It's like, no, actually. And it just keeps going. And it's such a good bit. And honestly, like, admirable, commendable, respectable, considering like that he turned out to be a real horrible person.
Not a very nice person, yeah. But yeah, it was very intentional to give him a horrible death that was as painful as possible, and they found a way to keep the character in the film.
That's true.
Without a head or shoulders or anything like that.
Yeah. So. And I honestly do think like it was a smart choice, honestly, to have what rallies people be grief, right? Like, that's not a spoiler. That's like every teaser opens with his funeral pretty much, right, for this movie. And so I feel like, considering that Beetlejuice is a story about death and people's transition into and sometimes out of it, I think it made perfect sense to have one of our like legacy characters that people really remember fondly pass away and kind of be what, like, that's the inciting incident of the movie, right? So it brings everyone together.
Everybody together,
yep. Really smart.
So we get back to the town, we get to the house, which Catherine O'Hara's character has like shrouded in the black veil the entire house.
Yes. Because the home's in mourning, and
the home is in mourning.
The home dies with him because she always hated that house. Yep. So they're out of there. Farewell tour.
All while this is happening, so Lydia Deetz, Winona Ryder's character, is back as well. She has a daughter, played by Jenna Ortega. Character's name is Astrid, and Astrid,
great name, by the way.
Yes.
Very Tim Burton name.
Yes. Astrid reluctantly comes along to all of this. Astrid is not getting along well with Lydia. Lydia's now like one of those paranormal TV show hosts.
Oh, it's so good.
Mm-hmm.
It's so good. As soon as I saw that, it's just about how they open. I'm like, they've got the sauce, man. They know. Yep. They know what's up.
It's, I will say the last few movies we've seen in August, well, most of them outside of like Alien, they take themselves way too seriously in all like the wrong ways.
Agreed.
And this one does not. This one knows what it is, and it leans into it, and it just has fun. And
for sure,
it starts right away.
Yeah, it's very goofy. It's very self-aware, and I think understands that a lot has changed in the world since the original Beetlejuice. And like Tim Burton has changed a lot as a filmmaker since the original Beetlejuice, right? We were talking about like going from his second feature directorial movie to now like, you know, pretty much having enough recognition out there, especially after how many billions of dollars or whatever Wednesday made, that he can really do whatever the hell he wants.
Yep. So Astrid wants very little to do with the proceedings because the boyfriend of Lydia turns the like wake into a wedding proposal, which is super weird and awkward, but like,
dude, it was tough watch, very, very, very cringeworthy.
So Astrid's like, I've had enough of this, and I'm out, and leaves and crashes her bike into the yard of like into a treehouse where Jeremy, played by Arthur Conti, who was in House of the Dragon.
Oh, was he really? I thought he looked vaguely familiar. I was trying to figure that out.
Yeah. So if you recognize him, that is probably where you saw him.
Okay.
So in House of the Dragon, and he invites her up, and they form a bond, form a relationship.
Yeah.
That
cute little romance for sure.
Yeah, it plays a big role in the movie, though, as we kind of move forward. So,
and that I will say felt very modern Tim Burton to me. Like that was the only thing I think about this movie that felt very 2020s, as I feel like that whole arc was very like, you're making this movie in a post Wednesday world. That whole relationship felt very Wednesday to me, like very YA. And I thought it was cute, and I thought it worked, and especially, you know, we'll talk payoff later, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think it would have been really, really easy to just be like, to just have Jenna Ortega's character just be Wednesday in this movie, but she's not. She's doing something very different and interesting. And I liked that you kind of change who the perspective character is and what their role is in all of this, because like, you know, in the original movie, Lydia comes from a family that's very, you know, like white collar, just kind of like stiff, you know, just your boring upper middle class family, right? And then you get to here and like, you know, obviously Lydia was like very goth, angsty, rebellious teen. And now it's the opposite, because her family is all, you know, bewitched and has done all this spooky stuff. And so her kid is like, wants to be normal. She's like going to boarding school. She doesn't believe in any of the paranormal stuff, which I thought was really, it was a really cute inversion of the dynamic.
And it's done really subtly too, which I appreciate. You're not like hit over the head with it. It's like if you catch it, you do. If you don't, cool, you'll still be fine.
Yeah.
But so all the while, Beetlejuice remains, and we haven't mentioned him much yet, but he's still lurking. His ex-wife is trying to find him after literally reassembling herself.
Yeah, she has a banger character intro.
Yeah. It's pretty
of all good. The pieces breaking out of the
like the crates,
it's like a warehouse where they which that was a fun cameo too, to have Danny DeVito as like kind of like the undead janitor,
right?
Because I don't think that was marketed at all ahead of time.
No, it wasn't. No, it was cool.
I didn't think so. Yeah.
So she reassembles herself literally with a stapler. It was great. And now is seeking out Beetlejuice so that she can be born again, I believe, right? And so that is a storyline that's playing out in a couple different places throughout the film, but then Beetlejuice is trying to get Lydia to see him because he still has dreams of marriage with her. So we move forward. And Beetlejuice is summoned one time when Lydia's boyfriend says it 3 times to make her like face her fears.
Right.
And they end up
because he thinks this is just some weird like traumatic delusion she's having, right?
Did she go like print up the flyers then too? Because she shows him the thing. Like this, if it's a delusion, did she make that up too? I was thinking that while I'm sitting there, but you know. whatever.
Oh yeah, I didn't think of that.
So
CinemaSins brain over here.
yeah, but so they end up in the model, which is cool. Like I liked those sequences in the first one,
Same.
and then end up back in the real world, quote unquote. But then we get Beetlejuice a lot in the third act with
Oh yeah.
we get Jenna Ortega's character, and this is where full on spoilers begin, everybody. So just
Yeah. We've dabbled a
just,
little, but here's your
yeah.
Yeah.
So Jenna Ortega's character on Halloween night, spooky night, goes to hang out with Jeremy. And they kiss, and then she realizes when she opens her eyes, they see
They're
like
floating.
She's off the floor. They're floating. And she realizes, wait, I didn't believe in ghosts, but I have my mom's power too, and I can see ghosts. And Jeremy's a ghost.
That was a great twist.
It was.
Such a great twist. And in retrospect, like, to me, a great twist in a movie is one that, like, when it happens, you're surprised, but you're like, no, I can see that. Like, that makes sense. That wasn't out of nowhere.
They told us. Hayden, they told us earlier when she was like, oh, all your albums are from the 90s.
Yeah, and I just was like, oh, he's just like some fucking hipster, part of my French. Beetlejuice gets one, I get one.
And then right after that, they showed the handbook for the recently deceased in his room.
And he's like, well, I picked this up at a yard sale.
Yeah.
Which to me, I was like, okay, yeah, I buy that.
Yeah, I mean, it's believable enough, right? But afterward, you're like, damn it, they told us.
I know.
So, anyway, as if that twist wasn't enough, there's another Jeremy twist to come because we think Jeremy's just, this sweet boy who's, a ghost. But it turns out, we find out later, he's a murderer. He murdered his family.
Yeah, it's such a Tim Burton, again, such a Wednesday-esque twist. But it works. It works. It's great. And I think if this was like the big plot point of the movie, it might fall a little flat, but it's one of several things going on.
Yeah.
And I think, honestly, in the beginning of this movie, like third act, there might be too much going on. Like, there's a lot of bouncing. There's a lot of bouncing around where it's like, we're choosing this character, we're choosing this character, we're choosing this character. And like, I have never seen a movie where it's more obvious that like, there are certain characters in this movie that only exist because Tim Burton wanted certain people on set. Like, he wanted his wife on set, and he wanted to work with Willem Dafoe. That is the only reason their characters exist.
I want to talk Willem Dafoe when we get to characters, but yeah. Anyway, story-wise, we see all this stuff in the underworld, and it turns into this whole race where Lydia's trying to save her daughter. I love the way that Arthur Conti played Jeremy because he's evil with the smile, right? And the whole time he's just like, oh, I'm sending you to hell forever, but he does it with the smile, and it's like, oh, thanks, and he's out, bye.
Because he's trying to trade essentially souls, right?
Yep.
With her.
Trading souls.
Or trade lives, right?
Which he did do, kind of, but he didn't do the final piece of the process. And we see the Soul Train twice, which I love the Soul Train scenes, and I think
it's such a good bit.
Yeah.
It was like laugh out loud good bit for me.
It was really good. So we get that. And anyway, it comes down to the final confrontation, and Beetlejuice and everyone prevails, and Lydia and Astrid are reunited and back together, and they have reformed their bond as mother and daughter. Astrid also finds her father and reconnects with him, who died quite obviously as a result of a piranha attack.
Yeah, that was a little morbid. They're like, oh my God, Dad, yay, like, we found you. And he's just like actively, like the piranhas are still on him in a very, which is very Beetlejuice, right? You can tell how everybody in Beetlejuice 1 and 2 now, right, have died just by looking at them, which I think is great.
But he saves her in the afterlife as well. And it was a cool moment. It was a nice like family moment. As much of a touching family moment as you can get in Beetlejuice, I guess. But
it was a bigger emotional payoff, honestly, than I was expecting. Because I think like this movie thematically, I think explores like family dynamics and relationships a lot more nuanced than I would have expected, right? And I also like that it's kind of like it has this message where it's like, hey, like goths, stop focusing on death so much you forget to live. You know what I mean? And
Yep.
like grief and acceptance. And I like that because we see, you know, people in the afterlife, it goes both ways, right? Where her dad runs into her. They have kind of maybe a 5-10 minute shared moment of screen time where he's kind of helping them out, right? And then at the end of it, he's not like, I want to get there to be with you. He's like, gives her a pat back, like, have a nice life. Don't come back here too soon. Which I think is just such a sweet sentiment and is like, I don't know, what everybody wants to hear from their relatives who have passed, right?
And he's like, I check in on you all the time, right? Did we ever realize or learn why they can't see him?
No. That's one of those weird, there's a couple threads in this movie that are like set up and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And then there's so much happens that they just never get around it. Like, that's weird.
I think it's one of those things they were banking on us to forget.
Yeah, there's that. And then there's also like the Lydia at one point mentions like, oh no, my mom's not dead. My mom's still around. And I'm like, what? Like, that doesn't make any sense because the whole like first movie, you assume that that's why she lives with her dad and his, you know, shitty wife that she doesn't really get along with, right? It's because who else would she be with? And so that kind of raises more questions than it answers, which I feel like we're going to get another one of these because it is going to make so much money. And the titling of it too, like it's just, you've got 2 Beetlejuices, make a movie with 3 Beetlejuices in the title.
I'd be shocked if the third one's not being written right now.
Oh, for sure.
So anyway, all ends well-ish for everyone at the end. Story, Hayden, before we get into characters, because there's definitely some character stuff to talk about here.
Oh, yeah. A lot of them.
Story-wise, we gave this a 7 out of 10. I think, I guess here's how I'd say it. Like, for the people out there that are like, you know, not every movie needs to have some deep meaning, you will love this movie.
Yeah, for sure.
At the same time, it does deal with themes like family dynamics, like you said, through the lens of grief and trauma. So I think there's something for everybody here.
Yeah.
But if you just want to go have a silly good time, you're going to be able to do that.
For sure. And like I said, I think beginning is pretty messy just because there's so much they have to set up and establish. But that moment you were talking about of when she realizes that he's a ghost and that twist, I think that's the moment where I finally see the vision. I'm like, okay, I understand all of the parts that lead to this. Like, this makes sense and I'm along for the ride. I just wish it didn't take as long to get there.
Yeah, but we get to hear the Deo song a few times and all that in the meantime.
God, they played that Deo song so much. Like, I know it's like a big thing. And they played a lot in the first movie too, actually, to be honest. Because I just rewatched it. I'm like, this song's in this movie like 4 times.
I just, you know, right away at the beginning, when the opening credits, you know, and the logo at the beginning and all of that, you just feel like you're back in Beetlejuice right away.
Oh, yeah. They hit you with that iconography. Quick.
So I will say, before we move into characters, in my theater, I had a family like 4 rows in front of me. And it was like the most adorable thing ever. The whole family were Beetlejuice like nuts. They all dressed up for it. They were all in costume. They had all the stuff. After the movie was over, in the closing credits, they all took pictures of each other, like at the movie, seeing Beetlejuice, and all of it. It was like the best thing ever. So it's so weird because, like, for me, this is a movie I was looking forward to, right? But for that, apparently, like, this is a major thing. It's like a core fandom thing in their family, which is really cool. So I'm glad, you know, that we revisit some of these franchises sometimes.
For sure.
So anyway, 7 out of 10, story-wise. Cast and performances. All right. Hayden, why the hell was Willem Dafoe in this movie?
Because Tim Burton wanted to work with Willem Dafoe. And because Willem Dafoe, it's an aesthetic thing. Like, Willem Dafoe and Tim Burton, I think, just make so much sense as a pairing. Because he has this, like, he's usually in movies where he plays people who are kind of, like, macabre. He's a little... He's zany, but he can be sinister. It has like that depth to him as an actor, right? But like I don't know. He was here for jokes. He was here because like they wanted him on set and they needed some like more comedy because I feel like Beetlejuice obviously is like the comedy relief and is super slapstick in the first movie, but in this one he has more to do. That's like important, I guess, or has stakes. So they had to have someone else be the goofy guy. And honestly, I think it worked because he's playing this character where he's like he used to play detectives as an actor when he was alive, and so now he's kind of like an afterlife homicide cop. But he's like not really good at it either. Like he's very much just doing it for optics.
The whole time he's playing a cop. Like he's not like the character is playing a cop. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
he's not. He's like
yeah.
reciting lines you'd hear on an over dramatic cop show.
Yeah, but it's honestly I feel like more like 40s 50s noir.
I kind of got
Times.
80s cop show from it too, though. Like
Yeah,
especially at the end
it's
when we
both.
get all the cops coming through the windows and everything. That is an 80s like
Mm-hmm.
you know TV show.
For sure.
Like they're closing in on the bad guys type of
Yeah.
moment. And
And I love that he's got this weird like gentlemanly thing about him where he always calls everyone like sir or ma'am or like Mr. Mrs. So he calls Beetlejuice like Mr. Juice like 7 times in the movie. And it's a good bit.
it is. I just want to remind you, this is the guy who played Jesus Christ in The Last Temptation of Christ. And
He's got layers, man.
he does.
He
Apparently,
can do everything. He can literally do
Mississippi
everything.
Burning. And he's got Nosferatu coming up later this year.
Yeah,
So, yeah, I mean, he's got a lot going on.
for sure.
So, I don't know. It was one of those things where it's like, this movie would have been totally fine if this character didn't even exist.
Mm-hmm.
But it was also fun. It's just another one of those things. It's like, would I want it taken out? No.
Yeah, for sure.
It's just innocent, stupid fun. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm good with it. What'd you think of the rest of the cast?
Dude, everyone brought their A game, especially. I would say our two leads being Lydia and Astrid, right? I thought their dynamic was really great. I love seeing both. I just love both of them as actors, as performers, and I think that like there's very much some torch passing going on here, right? Where I feel like Jenna Ortega is very much the Winona Ryder of this generation, right, of actors. So seeing the two of them play off of each other was like, it's like dream fan casting. You know what I mean?
Does that mean Jenna Ortega is going to be in like a bad alien movie soon?
Oh, I hope not. Actually, I don't want a bad alien movie, but like, I don't know. Put her in everything, man. I feel like she's the face of horror at this point.
I feel like Winona Ryder
this
can still
generation.
go though. I mean, she's Stranger Things
100%,
and all that.
100%.
And I feel like if we do a third movie, they'll both be back
For sure.
So
yeah,
but
I'm
just with you though.
Yeah,
go
I
ahead.
mean TLDR, everyone brought their A game. I think like Catherine O'Hara, I was actually really impressed by because I loved her character, the nuance of that performance, and it's really smart to me when I think an actor is and a director, whoever who's crafting the story as well, are able to kind of collaborate and be like bring in the image of who we have of this person as an actor and as a celebrity to the story, right? And I think that's why Catherine O'Hara's role works so well because like I think there's like a fondness and a comfort in seeing her on screen because like if you grew up in like the late 80s, early 90s or had parents who did and showed you those movies when you were growing up, which is the case for me, like she was like America's mom. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like she was in Beetlejuice, she was in Home Alone, probably a lot of other things that don't come to mind immediately. And I think they played off of that legacy really well of making her this like big figure within the world who still has really personal stakes to the characters that we love and that matter to us and that we're supposed to be attached to.
What I loved in this is that the character is so brilliantly played by her because the character is like very self-centered, Aiden, and all of that. But at the end, has a couple really touching moments where like the love for her, you know, not stepdaughter, comes through, right, and all of that.
Yeah.
And I just thought that the layers were really good. Also, like how this character dies is also the most ridiculous thing ever.
It's funny as hell. And it's in character for her.
It really is.
Too. It's so it's good.
She's in front of her dead husband's grave, which by the way is a giant shark fin. The gravestone is
I didn't catch that. Oh my god, you're right.
Yeah,
it totally is.
It looks like an ice sculpture of a giant shark fin. It's the best.
I was wondering, like, why is it so like curved? Now that you say that, I can totally see it.
Yep.
Wow.
And she is following some ritual where you get like asps, the snakes, and have them like bite you to show your love or profess your love. And she ordered
like
the snakes
Egyptian
defanged.
Thing.
Yeah. She ordered the snakes defanged. They were not defanged.
Yeah.
She gets bitten by both of them.
She got hit with that Temu scam, bro.
Yep. And wakes up in the waiting room.
And I love that she's immediately like so caring about it too.
Oh, I know. Oh, and the person was like, has doing this worked for you in the past or something like that? You know?
Yeah,
like,
does this usually work for you?
Right? Yeah, does this usually work for you when you act like that? Yeah.
Yeah. So in true Beetlejuice fashion, we're far into our review and we haven't talked about Beetlejuice, which I feel like is how these movies operate. He steals the scenes, he steals the show, but I think it takes both movies. He has way less screen time than you'd think.
Yeah, I was just about to say we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about Michael Keaton and Beetlejuice here.
Of course.
He's having the time of his life in this movie.
Oh yeah, you can tell he's just having a blast, and it's so fun to watch. And like the slapstick humor is there, the comedy is there. He still has that gruff personality, but he's also kind of like an ally to these people now, where it's almost like you know what he is? He's like the crappy uncle. It's like the drunk uncle.
It's kind of who does the right thing in the end. Yeah. Kind of. I found his performance to be fantastic. In fact, I'm going to go as high as say it's probably one of the best, most fun performances I've seen all year.
Oh, for sure.
Now, I don't think he's going to win an Academy Award for it. Could he be nominated for supporting actor? Probably.
And I can see that being justified, honestly. Because he is just like, he's such a character. Like, it's hard to think of Beetlejuice as being played by an actor who's like a real human being and goes about their day. Like, you know what I mean? Like, even when, because I'm doing a little Tim Burton retrospective right now, so I watched Beetlejuice and Batman 89 back to back. And I was like, how is this the same guy? Like, it's because there's just something, it's so over the top that there's almost like this like inhuman quality about Beetlejuice. And
I don't want to take us down a side path, but do you feel like Batman 89 still holds up?
Yeah.
I do too. I think it holds up just beautifully today. So it's a really well done film.
And I
just rewatched it too, like 2 days
ago.
ago.
And we'll get in that. We talk about like look, sound, and feel, but I think like that's one of the things that works about Tim Burton's movies so well is that they're usually practical and they're not really trying to go for a specific era or look or period. Like they're just creating a vibe almost.
Yeah.
You know, and that vibe doesn't really change. And that's something that I really liked about like revisiting this town is that like you go back to the town of Beetlejuice and like 35, 36 years have passed in real life, but it looks pretty much exactly the same as it did back then.
Yep.
And part of that is that's just Vermont. That's just how Vermont operates.
Well, and I think in smaller towns, like life moves more slowly, right? Like in terms of like innovation and just advances and all that type of thing. If you're in a small town, I'm not saying you don't have like internet or anything. Don't get at me, but
right. But I mean? People aren't like bulldozing the town square and building up some like suburban neo schlock with only straight edge buildings. At least if usually they're not. Hopefully they're not. Yeah. They don't allow that shit in Vermont. It's actually illegal. Fun fact.
Good. So let's get to looks, sound, and feel. First, let's score cast performances. We gave it 8 out of 10. Really good stuff across the board, pretty much. So look, sound, and feel. Hayden, you loved the look of this film.
Chef's kiss, man. Just perfection. I think like Tim Burton has such a defined aesthetic at this point. And honestly, like I would go as far as to say like Tim Burton kind of defined what Halloween looks like. Like he created the like in the way you
in the
think
90s,
of like
yes.
yeah. Like if you think about like, you know, like how like Coca-Cola and their big Santa Claus marketing kind of define the look of Christmas. Like I feel like Tim Burton did that for Halloween. Like I think spooky season is just his. And they really went all out on it with this movie being set like during Halloween weekend, right around those couple days. So the town is all decorated. You got pumpkins and jack-o'-lanterns everywhere. And I think just like the props and the sets and like the practical effects of just like the scares in this movie, right? Well, they're not really scary, but there's weird moments of like, honestly, this movie is gorier at times than I thought it would be.
Like the spill your guts moment.
That and just like we talked about like how Charles looks after he dies.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, it's nasty. It's grody, but it's
like so over the top though, Hayden. Like that, the Charles part.
Yeah.
That it's hard to even take it seriously, you know?
And I think that's intentional, right? Is that like you almost it's like so absurd and so over the top spooky that like it comes around to not being horror anymore. It's just fun.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is just like it's like I feel like across these two movies now, because you get to explore, I think, a lot more of the world and the lore of Beetlejuice than you do in the first one. Right? The first one is a very small, self-contained story.
There's a lot more going on too.
It is. There's a lot more going on here, and there's like weird, fun filmmaking practices where like Beetlejuice is apparently from Spain, so like
we
what
get
he
the
gives
black and white videos for footage from like the Middle Ages
Black
or whatever.
Plague, yeah. But the way it's shot, it's very Universal monster, and they give him this like. I think it's probably a different voice actor, honestly, because they have just this like this classic like horror dub voice of like the Spanish voice actor as he's telling the story of him and his wife and how they came to live and how she killed him and all this stuff. And it's just like there's so many fun little aesthetic choices in this movie that it's just like it's perfect. Like every frame of this movie just like looks so it's just exactly what you'd want out of like I feel like it's this aesthetic refined and with a much bigger budget than they had for the original.
Oh yeah.
But then again, they kept the same sensibilities of that, right? Because I think that's the thing that's really hard to do when you do a legacy sequel is that like even the ones that try really hard to keep it, like it just doesn't like if you go back and if you watch like Star Wars Episode 4 and then Episode 7 right next to each other, they don't gel super well, right? They look very different from each other. I don't really feel that way about this movie. Like there's no moments where that I think stick out or don't feel like Beetlejuice.
Like there's new filmmaking trends, like the way things are shot or something like that. You know what I mean? But the town looks the same. The scenes inside the model look the same. You're right. It's
the afterlife keeps the same aesthetic, but they build it out more. Like you see more of that set, but it keeps the sensibilities of how it looked and how it felt, honestly, which I think is most important.
This movie for me is visually comfort food, in terms of the sound too. This movie is like exactly what I wanted it to be.
I agree.
And in almost every way, to be honest with you, like I know there have been some really mixed reviews, even from within our own team. Yeah. Right? Like chatting about it before either of us went to see this. And I was concerned, but then I got there and I'm like, you know what? This feels like Beetlejuice. It's exactly what I want. And and maybe it's because some of those people hadn't had to watch Borderlands and Reagan and all these other things before seeing this, like we did. That made us really appreciate just what a brilliant filmmaker and a really talented cast can pull off when they're all having a fuck ton of fun doing it.
Hell yeah.
And
there's that, and I think it's about like I think when a movie gets its cult classic and stays that way for as long as Beetlejuice, it becomes this thing where it's like it becomes larger than life and people get these huge expectations for it. I mean, to me, like I love that movie. I have a great time every time I watch it, but I don't think it's like amazing, like best thing ever. Like, oh my god, like this is like in the pantheon of cinema, right? Like,
would you put it on your top 10 movies of the 80s? I wouldn't, but I still love it.
Maybe, but even still, like that's like it's not. I think the thing is, I think you and I are going into this with fresher eyes than a lot of people because you didn't really grow up with Beetlejuice, right?
No, in fact, I'd seen it once before. I watched it for a second time about a week ago.
I did the exact same thing. I saw it for the first time last year, and now it's an annual rewatch.
But I didn't remember any of it, really. I remembered the model, kind of. And I remember the dinner party scene with Deo, and all that.
Oh, yeah.
But that was it.
Yeah.
So I really got to see it for the first time again, which is always a cool feeling.
For sure.
And yeah, I'll be honest, I kind of like this one better. I love the first one. But I think with how this one expanded the world a little more, it's just a little bit more lighthearted. I like it. I really enjoyed this one.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm there yet. I think that'll take time for me to decide if I'm there. I think there are things about it that I like more. And I don't think it's necessarily a better movie, but I think it just has more going on, and so it's more interesting and engaging from that.
Yeah, I didn't say it's a better movie. I don't think I would say it's a better movie.
Yeah.
But I think I enjoyed myself more this time than I did with the first one.
Fair. Yeah, I think it's a worthy sequel. Like, I think it deserves, or I think it's earned. I think it deserves to be on the pantheon there, right? Where I think, like, for me, like, now to me, the two are kind of like, I think they're going to become inseparable, where it's just like they're, because, Beetlejuice is one of those movies becoming Halloween tradition for me, where every year, usually around the beginning of the season, right? Like, that's an annual rewatch. And I think I'm going to do the same for the sequel as well. And hopefully we get a third that deserves to, round out a trilogy there. That would be ideal.
Take like 2-3 years to do it. Don't rush it. Like, don't bring out Beetlejuice next year.
They're skipping 3, aren't they 4? Oh, no, never mind. I can't count.
3 times.
I've been out of school for too long.
Jeez. We're not paid to math. That is very true. That's why Steven's are on the team. Yeah, I mean, and I feel like we can't move on from Look, Sound, and Feel without talking about that final sequence with the musical number and that choir that's up on the balcony inside the church.
It's perfect. It's so good.
It's just
that moment made me cry, believe it or not. And it was one of those moments where it wasn't because it was like particularly emotionally resonant. I'm just like, I'm so grateful that I get to like I was just grateful to be there and have that moment and go see it opening weekend and like unspoiled, untainted, just like experience this movie because it's such a joy. And I think that's the thing is that like a lot of these legacy sequels, reboot quels, whatever the hell you want to call it, are kind of soulless, to be honest. Or
it's such a cash grab half the time.
Yeah, there's mixed results, right? There's some great ones, there's some stinkers. Like I feel like the new Screams are great, the new Terminators are awful. The new Star Wars is, I think, fall in the middle for most people. But this is one that I think just like it understands like the aura and the essence of the original and respects it, but goes in there and it's just like, let's have fun with this and explore it more and, give it a good send off. Or I guess maybe send in if we're going to get more. I don't know.
I think we are. I'd be shocked if we don't. They didn't kill off enough of the main cast to not do this again. So
I'm putting money on it, dude. Max series before a sequel. It's what Warner Brothers is doing now. They put a movie out and they do a Max series between.
Do you think Michael Keaton would sign on for a Max series?
Yeah, I think so.
Winona Ryder probably would because Stranger Things is wrapping up after Stranger Things 5. So,
which I think they're almost done shooting if they're not.
Yeah.
Like done.
So, yeah. I mean, I could see it. Looks, Sound, and Feel, we're giving a 9. Really high score. You gave it a 10.
Yeah, I do think it's masterclass. I think they achieved everything I could have hoped in that regard and did more than I thought they were capable of.
And I'm with you. For me, like Tim Burton can be a little grating sometimes when for example, sometimes Gotham City in his Batman films is a little too cartoony for what the character is, you know? But I feel
Fair
like
enough.
he hit it perfectly. Like we got the Tim Burtonness of it, but it also just it was grounded enough that it really worked.
You don't love dancing through the museum with a guy holding a boombox playing a Prince song?
No, that part was okay. In fact, it was Batman Returns that I feel got a little too cartoony.
Okay. I haven't watched that movie since I was like 5. But I'm planning on rewatching it this weekend.
Penguins
so we'll
with
see.
Rockets on their backs and
hell yeah,
stuff like that. You know, it's like in Austin Powers when it's like, can I just get a shark with a freaking laser beam attached to its head? You know?
Yeah,
it's kind of like that. All right, Intangibles. I feel like this movie has a bunch of rewatch potential. You mentioned it earlier. The first act might be a little slow on rewatch.
I think it's going to be tough on rewatch, honestly, because it was slow on first watch. Like I think it was like, because I think to me when I'm rewatching when I'm watching a movie like at home, like a rewatch, there's degrees to how much I'll lock in, right? And like when I rewatch Beetlejuice, like, you know, if I gotta go to the bathroom and make some popcorn in the first 40 minutes, like I'm not gonna ask anyone to pause it for me. Like,
yeah,
it is what it is.
And I think part of that is just a byproduct of taking over 35 years to make this movie. Like you have to kind of reintroduce these characters a little bit because they're at a totally different place in their lives, all of them.
Yeah, so, I mean, you have to catch up essentially, potentially, 2 generations of people also who've never seen this movie.
Yep.
Because 36 years is 2 adults ago. You know, like there are people who were raised on this movie who had children who now have children. You know what I mean?
I think if you'd done this 5 years later, you could have done a quick reintroduction of the characters and moved into your story, right? But doing it over 35 years later, you have to take your time.
For sure.
So I think it was necessary, but I'm with you. Like, I don't know. It's one of those things where I think when I rewatch and I'm in the mood to watch it, I might even, if I, on digital, like fast forward about 30 minutes in and then hit play.
I don't think I would do that because there's enough moments in the beginning that I really like and do want to rewatch within context.
But I'm talking like when I get into that 4th, 5th watch, like if I just watching it just to have something out when I fall asleep.
In 5, 6 years, yeah.
Yeah. So
fair.
But I think there's just a lot to love here. I've said it a few times in the review. It matters to me if I can tell that everybody just wants to be there.
Yeah.
And they 100% do in this movie.
Yeah, and I think if you have a passionate cast and crew, you'll always find a passionate audience somewhere.
Yeah. And in contrast, we saw Borderlands, where I'm pretty sure half the cast talked to their agent was like, is there any, like, there's no way to get out of this contract.
Right.
So, yeah, I don't know. I just had a really good time. I don't know what else there is to say on Intangibles. It's just going to be, it's fun.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And like, I think Beetlejuice 2, really good movie. Not necessarily a great movie, but I think a movie that a lot of people will like really like to love.
Yes. Especially
if the original is a big part of who you are this time of year.
Yeah, I would agree. So 8 out of 10 we gave for Intangibles, which means, hey, in our final score for this movie, it's probably a little lower than what we sound like.
For sure.
But 7.5. And I feel we walked into this, just so everybody here knows, when we're talking like off air, we were both like, you know what? If we walk out of this saying it's a 6, we're thrilled.
No, real. Like, I thought this was going to be like bad with some really fun moments. And I don't know if that's the way I think it's part of it is the way it was marketed. I think another part of it is just I've been burned by so many of these. Like, genuinely, Tyler, I think the only legacy sequel at this point that I like to love is Scream 2022. Like, I think all the other ones I've just
even
soured on.
Like Scream 6 too, like both of those, I assume you mean?
Yeah.
Okay. I like the Terminator Dark Fate. But not the one before it.
Okay,
Genesis.
fair.
And the Star Wars movies, I'm with you. Like I don't know. This is not the video for that. We don't have enough time anyway. But no, I'm with you. Like legacy sequels can be weird, and sometimes I get really bizarre ideas. I don't know if you know this, but like when they were locking down Harrison Ford to do Kingdom of the Crystal Skull in 2008 or 7 to film it, they wanted the whip to be all CGI.
Oh no!
And he drew a line. He was like, "I'm not signing to do this if you don't let me use the real whip." Like those are the types of ideas that we get sometimes when it's like we do shit because we can. And it's one thing I love about this movie is he kept it
never
grounded.
Once felt that way.
Yeah. Like there's obviously CGI in this, but
there's not even a ton though. I don't
there
think.
isn't a ton, but all of it just feels genuine and real and like needed in the movie.
Yeah, and the stuff that doesn't feel real feels still appropriately in place in the world, right? Like
that's what I mean by real. I don't mean like, one for one real.
Right.
Yeah.
Because the Play-Doh sandworms don't look real.
No.
but they look like they belong there.
They're real for Beetlejuice, though. It just fits. And it wasn't like, oh, now we can George Lucas this, and just because we have the technology, we can make the sandworm look so much better this time.
Like, dude, can you imagine?
No, like, I think that was a good choice. So yeah, we both had a lot of fun with this. Our overall score for this movie is 7.5. And yeah, definitely see this movie if you get a chance to. I think if you loved this movie growing up or you loved it at any point watching it, just go see this in the theater. I think you'll just be glad you did. The vibe of it is why to go see in the theater. That's
for sure. Yeah, I think like this is like the defining movie of this Halloween season this year, right? And I think like
speaking of, it was right around the corner, and you better not say that.
We'll get to that next week, but you've won me over. That movie's gonna be fun.
I don't think it's gonna be as bad as you were fearing or assuming.
No, it's not that, but it's just like it's one of those things where, and this is when we just get into our yap session. So everyone who's still watching, I appreciate y'all being
subscribe, by the way.
Yeah, right. Like, because you and I go see movies weekly.
Yeah.
At this point, if not more. So there are some trailers that come on, and I'm just like, every week I'm just like, fuck, dude. Like, oh my God. And Speak No Evil, like, I vividly remember when I saw Challengers and that trailer came on, I nudged the people I was with, like, yo, hold on, you got to watch this. This is ridiculous. So I've been watching this trailer for at least 6 months at this point.
Me too.
Or at least 5. You know what's the scariest part about the Beetlejuice movie, honestly, Tyler? Seeing the Minecraft trailer before it and realizing that like we're gonna see that trailer every week for the next 6 months, dude.
For the next at least more.
At least.
Did you get the Red 1 trailer?
Yeah.
We're reviewing that, right? Like we kind of It's gonna be so much fun to rip Dwayne. Can't wait.
Yeah.
That movie's gonna be bad.
I feel like you're the most excited person I know for that movie because you're stoked for a chance to just dog on The Rock. You just can't wait for a moment to pick that
to do it.
But I know. But it's fucking crazy.
The movie looks bad.
It is. And it's crazy to act like all like high and mighty and above your peers because you're like Mr. Hollywood now and you're making like Jumanji 4.
I know.
Like, come on, dude.
Fairy, for Christ's sake. You made Doom. Not Dune, Doom. The really shitty one.
Was that like a video game?
Yeah, you should go watch it.
And it's never even heard of that
ever made.
Whoa. Okay. Noted.
Really bad.
2005. Yeah, that's peak
Yeah.
for that kind of movie.
All right. So anyway, let's get out of here. But yeah, go see Beetlejuice. You'll have fun. Like Hayden said, a little bit of spoiler alert. Our next movie review will be Speak No Evil next week. At some point, we usually get these out on Saturdays, but that one's probably gonna be a little bit later. I am out of town for part of the week. There is a Marcus Theater, like the chain I use and get discounts on now, like there.
No way.
But I'm not going to the theater. I'm going to be so tired after like speaking all day.
You don't want to. Going to a movie theater on vacation is weird too. I mean, you're not on vacation. You're
for
working.
Work. But yeah.
But you know what I'm saying? Like during travel. Because the nice thing about traveling for work is you can at least be like just go to a restaurant you've never been to before or some shit. You know what I mean?
I'm not even that. I'm going to Uber Eats it and pay the $30 in delivery fees. And I'm going to. But here's what I love doing when I'm out of town for work. And this is where we really start yapping. So after this, we're going to hang up. But, or stop.
We're going to hang up.
Stop recording. But anyway, when I'm in a hotel for work, like it's so draining because I'm usually speaking all day, nonstop. So what I really like to do, and I don't get to do this at home, like ever, is I get back to the hotel room at like 5. I'll eat something, and then I'm laying down and just reading a book until I fall asleep.
Real.
And I'm spending like a solid 11, 12 hours in bed. It's the best. Plus nice. Nothing beats hotel air conditioning.
That's true. It's like industrial, dude.
It's like icebox quality. Yeah,
it is. It's crazy.
So yeah,
you have fun with that next week.
So anyway, okay. Thanks everybody. Check out some of our new stuff on the channel as well. If you're still here, we got some shorts out that I would appreciate, Star Wars and a Batman one and a brand new Indiana Jones video as well. So check all that out. Thanks everybody. We'll talk to you soon.
GG's. Take care, y'all.